Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still smell the faint whiff of vinyl records spinning in a smoky living room, hear the hum of a tube television warming up, or feel the solid click of a rotary phone dial. Those were the 1970s, vivid, colorful, and endlessly inventive. I was just a young man then, full of energy, watching the world explode with new ideas. We didn't know it at the time, but so many of the gadgets and breakthroughs born in that decade would shape the lives we're all living right now. In today's video, I want to take you back with me. Together, let's wander through 25 incredible inventions of the 1970s. Things that felt futuristic then, but are still with us today, woven into the very fabric of modern life. I'll tell you not just what they were, but how they felt, how we lived with them, and why they mattered. So buckle up. Let's time travel back to an era of shag carpets, bell-bottoms, and mind-blowing innovation. The microprocessor. I still remember the first time I read about it in a magazine. It was called the Intel 4004. Imagine that. The brains of a whole computer packed onto a tiny silicon chip. It felt like something out of Star Trek. Back then, computers filled entire rooms, whirring away with blinking lights. But with the microprocessor, suddenly it was possible to shrink all that power down. Most of us didn't realize it at the time, but this little invention was going to transform the world. Without the microprocessor, there'd be no laptops, no smartphones, no smartwatches, none of the sleek digital companions we carry today. It was like someone opened the door to the future and whispered, "Come on in." Email protocols. I know this might sound strange, but there was a time when "you've got mail" wasn't even a phrase. Back then, if you wanted to talk to someone far away, you picked up a phone or wrote a letter. But in the early 70s, a brilliant fellow named Ray Tomlinson sent the very first email. He even chose the @ symbol we all type 100 times a day now. At first, it was just scientists and researchers sending little text strings across clunky machines. But for us, even hearing about it was like science fiction. Today, entire businesses, friendships, even families depend on that simple invention. It's amazing to think it all started as an experiment in the 1970s. Video cassette recorder. Let me tell you, when the VCR arrived, it felt like magic. Before that, if you missed a TV show, well, tough luck. You had to wait for a rerun if it ever came. But suddenly, with this bulky machine sitting under the TV, we could record shows, rewind them, and even rent movies from the local store. I can still feel the satisfying clunk of pushing a VHS tape into the slot, hearing the gears whir. Families gathered around not just to watch television anymore, but to control it. Without the VCR, there'd be no Netflix binge nights or on-demand culture. It was the very beginning of watching what you wanted, when you wanted. Atari and home video games. I'll never forget the first time I played Pong. 2 little white paddles and a dot bouncing back and forth on the screen. Simple? Sure. But to us, it was like stepping into another dimension. Atari brought video games out of arcades and into our living rooms. Kids, parents, even grandparents could pick up the joystick and join in. And now, gaming is a multi-billion-dollar industry that rivals Hollywood. All of it traces back to that humble little beeping screen in the 1970s. The Walkman, picture this. Before the Walkman, music was something you listened to in your living room through big stereo speakers. Then Sony dropped this little marvel, a portable cassette player with headphones. Suddenly, The world had a soundtrack you could carry in your pocket. I used to strap on my Walkman, slip in a tape, maybe Fleetwood Mac or the Eagles, and stroll down the street feeling like the star of my own movie. Today, we've got AirPods and Spotify, but that personal connection to music started with the Walkman. Post-it notes. Funny story. Post-it notes were born by accident. A scientist at 3M was trying to make a super strong adhesive and ended up with a weak one. But that mistake turned into those little yellow squares we've all used to jot reminders. In the 70s, they were this quirky new office tool. Now, they're everywhere. From classrooms to corporate boardrooms, they may be small, but they're a perfect example of how a tiny idea can stick around forever. MRI. If you ever had to get an MRI scan, you owe a quiet thank you to the 1970s. Before that, looking inside the human body without cutting it open was practically impossible. When the first full-body MRI images appeared, it was jaw-dropping. For doctors, it was like turning on the lights in a dark room. I remember reading about it in the paper. It sounded almost too good to be true. Now, MRIs save millions of lives every year, all thanks to the breakthroughs of that decade, the floppy disk. The floppy disk. 8 inches wide at first, big enough to double as a dinner plate. But man, did it feel futuristic. Instead of stacks of punch cards or clunky reels of tape, here was a flat little disk you could slide into a drive and save your work. I still remember the little whoosh sound when you pushed one in. Without the floppy, we wouldn't have USB drives or cloud storage. It taught us the idea that data could move, travel, and live outside of one machine. Ethernet before Wi-Fi, before broadband, before the internet as we know it, there was Ethernet. Bob Metcalf and his team at Xerox PARC came up with a way for computers to talk to each other over cable. I know that doesn't sound thrilling, but trust me, this was the start of networking. In the 70s, it meant researchers could share data faster. Today, it means you can stream movies, video call your kids, or work from home. Every time you plug in that little cable, you're holding a piece of the 1970s. Cell phone prototypes. I'll never forget seeing a photo of Martin Cooper holding that giant brick of a phone. It weighed nearly 2 pounds and had a battery life of just 30 minutes. But it was wireless, no cord, no tether. Back then, the idea of calling someone from the street felt outrageous. Now, we take it for granted. We FaceTime across continents, text in seconds, and carry the world in our pocket. But it all began with that clunky prototype in the 1970s. Genetic engineering science in the 70s wasn't just about gadgets. It was about biology, too. When researchers first cut and spliced DNA, they opened the door to modern medicine. Insulin, vaccines, cancer treatments, all of these became possible because of those early experiments. I didn't understand the science back then, but I remember the buzz, headlines about playing God and miracle cures. Today, it's not science fiction. It's everyday life-saving medicine. Laser printer. Let me tell you, printers used to be loud, messy beasts. Then came the laser printer. Suddenly, you could get crisp, sharp text on a page just like a professional press. I can still picture offices in the late 70s marveling at this wizard machine. Without it, there'd be no slick home documents, no professional resumes, no school reports printed with pride. LCD screens. Long before flat TVS hung on our walls, LCD, liquid crystal display, was born. At first, it was tiny. Watch faces, calculators, little displays. But it was revolutionary. Imagine going from glowing green digits on bulky tubes to slim, crystal-clear numbers on a flat panel. Today, LCD is in everything. Phones, laptops, TVs. The 1970s were when we first glimpsed a future of slim screens. Digital camera. In 1975, a Kodak engineer built the first digital camera. It was clunky, slow, and saved images on cassette tape, but it worked. For those of us who grew up taking rolls of film to the drugstore, the idea of instant pictures was mind-blowing. That seed grew into the smartphones we carry today, snapping and sharing photos in seconds. Personal computers. The Apple II, the Commodore PET, the TRS-80. Suddenly, computers weren't just for scientists. They were for us. I remember walking into a Radio Shack and seeing that glowing green screen. Kids were programming little games. Parents were balancing checkbooks. The home computer was born, and with it, a whole new way of life. GPS groundwork. When the first satellites of the Global Positioning System went up, it didn't make headlines. But trust me, this was the start of never being lost again. In the 70s, if you wanted to get somewhere, you unfolded a giant paper map and hoped for the best. Today, we tap an app and glide through traffic with turn-by-turn directions, all thanks to those satellites launched in the 1970s. Barcodes and UPC. I still chuckle, remembering the first time a cashier scanned a pack of gum with a laser. Beep! Just like that, no typing in the price. Barcodes changed shopping forever, making checkout faster, inventory smarter, and prices more accurate. Today, from supermarkets to Amazon warehouses, that little zebra stripe rules the world. Genetic sequencing. Frederick Sanger developed a method to read DNA itself. It was painstaking then, but it laid the groundwork for the Human Genome Project. I didn't fully get it at the time, but looking back, that's when we started to see life itself as code. Today, it's how we fight disease, grow food, and understand what makes us us. The Rubik's Cube. All right, maybe not life-saving, but who could forget the Rubik's Cube? That colorful little puzzle stormed into the world in the mid-70s. I can still feel the plastic click as I twisted and turned, trying desperately to line up those colors. It was more than a toy. It was a symbol of creativity, logic, and patience. And today, it's still here, challenging new generations. Inkjet printers. Another quiet revolution. Inkjet printers. Suddenly, color printing wasn't a dream anymore. Those bright graphics popping off the page in the 70s felt like pure magic. Now, we barely blink when a photo prints in full color at home. But that wonder started in labs of the 1970s. Genetically engineered insulin. For people with diabetes, this was life-changing. Before, insulin had to come from animals. In 1978, scientists used recombinant DNA to create human insulin. It was a miracle, safer, more effective, and widely available. Today, millions of lives depend on it, and it all began in that incredible decade. Fiber optics. Imagine light carrying information down a glass strand thinner than a hair. That was the dream in the 70s, and it worked. At first, it seemed niche, just for labs. But today, fiber optics are the backbone of the Internet, letting us stream, call, and share across the globe in milliseconds. The pocket calculator. Oh, the excitement when calculators shrank down from desk monsters to pocket-sized marvels. I remember saving up just to buy one. Suddenly, math homework was faster, Businesses were smoother, and numbers didn't seem so scary anymore. That tiny screen of glowing digits was a marvel of the 1970s. Genetic cloning. Before Dolly the sheep in the 90s, the basic techniques of cloning were being worked out in the 70s. For us, it was shocking to even hear the word clone. But the science of that era shaped how we talk about medicine, agriculture, even ethics today. Email expansion. By the late 70s, email wasn't just a lab experiment anymore. It was spreading. Universities, businesses, government agencies, slowly but surely, the world was wiring itself together. I didn't send my first email until years later, but knowing it was born in that decade fills me with pride. The 1970s weren't just about disco and lava lamps. They were about connecting the world. Closing reflection. Looking back now, I realize the 1970s weren't just another decade. They were the dawn of a new age. We danced to vinyl records. We wore wild patterns. We cruised in big cars with chrome smiles. But beneath it all, we were quietly laying the foundation for the 21st century. Every time I swipe on my smartphone, print a document, or watch a movie on demand, I hear echoes of that era. The 1970s gave us inventions that didn't just fade into history. They grew, evolved, and still shape our daily lives. So, as someone who lived it, let me say, it was an incredible time to be young, curious, and alive, and I'm thrilled we can share it together today. Because the 1970s weren't just the past. They're still with us, every single day.